lots going on, including the Indiana High School Boys Basketball Tournament. Joining us now, two former greats from Indiana, Pat Graham and Sherron Wilkerson, former teammates. We had them on earlier, which it was great. We got to hear some great stories from those guys. They were getting ready to play earlier this year. I never thought about you guys potentially playing again. So that's kind of crazy and fun to watch. Of course, thank you guys, Sherron and Pat, for joining us.
Thank you.
Pleasure. Absolute pleasure.
Before I get to obviously what we were going to talk about last night, big news breaking with Indiana's only recruit for 2024 and a major one at five-star Liam McNeeley decommitting from Indiana the day after it was, I don't want to say leaked, but put out that Mike Woodson would be returning. And he decommits from here. And Todd Leary texted me and just said, now what? And I'm like, that's a great question. And Pat, you talked about that you'd kind of saw this coming.
I know nothing. I don't know the kid. I don't know. I haven't talked to anyone up there. I just had the way the season was going. And then, you got one kid, one recruit. I mean, Sherron came to IU with a number of guys. I come with 7. I don't know. It's kind of weird when you're an only recruit. I know the portal's changed that a little bit, but I mean, that kid doesn't have any ties to Indiana. I mean, he's from Texas. He's played in Florida for the last couple of years. And I mean, Sherron and I lived in this state, and Todd Leary and Matt Nover and guys like that. Like, Calvert, we lived in this state. So Indiana was most likely probably going to be a big part of our lives after basketball was over. I doubt that kid's planning on moving to Indiana after basketball is over. So, I mean, kids like that they don't have any ties or binding to the state of Indiana. And it's just the way it is in today's world when you go after 5 stars, and the 5 stars aren't from the state of Indiana. It's just a different world.
Sherron, about being recruited and not necessarily recruiting from your coaching standpoint, because that's not allowed. And I know you guys would never do that. But it's just a player. I'm assuming, because I was never recruited, but I'm assuming you want to feel the love. At least you want to feel wanted and needed. Most importantly.
I think Pat hit the nail on the head. I think in this day and age, there's no loyalty to the program. There's no loyalty to the state. There's no loyalty to the coach. I think nowadays the mantra is the NIL money. Back in those days, it was the loyalty to be able to have the opportunity to go play for Bobby Knight. And I heard you guys' conversation as I joined the podcast. Pat is right. When Coach Knight was there, our roster was 85% Indiana kids. And not every kid on that roster was a 4 or 5 star kid, but they understood Indiana basketball and what it meant to put the jersey on. So I think that's absolutely critical in today's recruiting war, if you will. I think the other piece that really hurts guys, when you NBA guys, you practice for 2 hours and you go home. At the college level, you got to practice for 2 hours, then you have to mentor for 2 hours, then you have to go recruit for another 4 or 5 hours. And I think that's critical. And I think that there's certain coaches at the collegiate level. And I'll even throw Matt Painter's name in there. Those guys get it. They understand the recruiting battle. They understand how much sacrifice it takes. They understand how much travel it takes. It's a grind. And if you're not willing to make that grind, you're going to miss out on the recruitments.
Yeah, Pat, I talked earlier about it's the time investment needed by a college coach. It's crazy because of everything that Sherron just said. It's not just practice, it's planning, it's recruiting, it's forecasting recruiting, it's making the visits, all of those things that you have to do. It takes a crap load of time. Nobody wants to go sit in a high school gym after you're a coach and you have your own team. The last thing you probably want to do is go sit in another gym watching a lot of other guys play basketball, but that is part of the job.
Oh, I mean, I compare that to what I said when we went to IU, and if we got benched or yelled at or made to go to class or whatever, I said it's comparable to going into the Army or Navy, Air Force and calling parents and saying they make us get up at 4 a.m. Like, what the hell were you thinking? You were you were getting involved in. Well, same thing goes with getting into college coaching. And Sherron did it for a while. I had an opportunity and chose not to. Welcome to that world. I mean, that's what you have to do. And, when sectionals are going on, you got to get out and recruit. You got to meet kids and you got to shake hands and kiss babies. I mean, you can say whatever you want, but it's the way it was. Coach Knight was such a different, like it's very unfair to compare him because he got to choose, I hate to say it, but he got to choose who he wanted to play there. He had some, I'm not going to mention his names. He had some great players. He told to go to another school because they knew they weren't going to be a fit at Indiana. That doesn't happen anymore. And, you can't live on your name anymore. I mean, it is the NIL and the transfer portal. Everyone's basically on an even playing field now. And you can call that, well, that's not the way it used to be. No, it isn't. So either you're going to have to change with the times or you're going to go down on a sinking ship. And, I still think that kid looked at everything going on up there and how this season's went and the questions, I guess, is the biggest thing, and said, I don't have any ties to Indiana. I'm out of here.
Yeah, Sherron, as both of you guys came in with recruiting classes, as Pat said, but coming in as a lone guy, and then you're looking from afar at the program and what's going on with it and who else might or might not even be there. When you don't have an understanding of who you might even be playing with, that has to be very daunting and maybe off-putting.
No, I think that this portal has really changed the entire scene of the recruiting process. You got guys, think about it from this perspective. As a potential college recruiter, I can go one of two ways. I can build my program around high school kids, or I can go to the portal and I can get men that are 22, 23 years old that have played at the collegiate level for at least 3 or 4 years. I mean, man, from a perspective of longevity, from a perspective of sustainability, I think that it would probably be, I think it would be imperative that you look at both and maybe even a combination of both. But I think that if you go top heavy and you go and you hit the portal and bring all kids in from the portal, it's going to be hard to create an identity in such a short period of time. But then on the back end of it, if you go and you recruit the high school kids, now you got 18, 19-year-old kids playing against grown men. I mean, man, and then additionally, the second part that you have to think about too is if I recruit a kid from a high school program and they come to my program and I develop them, I get them better for that year, are they going to leave my program the following year? I think that there's so many components that you have to put into play there, specifically when you're going to recruit kids. But I think for us here in the state of Indiana, specifically being in Bloomington, if you go a 250-mile radius in each direction, that covers your recruiting ground. I mean, man, we're in a unique situation because of the Indiana high school coaching that is here. I believe that we are in the epicenter of the recruiting in the Midwest. And I think that it definitely behooves every program in the state of Indiana to look at the Indiana kids, because I think that the Indiana kids has a leg up on most of the kids in the country.
Chemistry of uber importance. Pat, you came in with a gigantic class of guys that had to weld together with a whole bunch of guys that were already there. And I remember last time when Sherron came behind you, you had the talk with him. It was passing of the torch. But that's part of keeping that chemistry and working Sherron into that chemistry that you guys already had going. And as Sherron just mentioned, the portal kind of really fractures that.
Oh, there's no question. Again, Indiana's going to have to, no one wants to admit this. Fans don't want to admit it. Coaches don't want to admit it. Former players like us don't want to admit it. The dynamics of college basketball has changed. That's obvious, but we still can't do things the way Bob Knight did them. And that's the biggest hurdle for fans because they can't let go of that. And boys, those days are over. It's over. It shouldn't be forgotten. But it's over. So, I'm probably too far on the side of old school. I want to know these players. I want to know their background. I want to know, it's kind of like back when we were kids and you watch NFL or Major League Baseball, you got in college basketball, you knew the teams because they were there for 3 and 4 years, and you knew the players and you knew their stats. I could go through every Major League Baseball or NFL or college basketball team. I could name you every starter. And now I couldn't tell you. Hell, I'm lucky to know 10 guys in the NBA. That you don't know them the way we once did. College basketball, it just is. That's just the way this is because of the NBA and leaving after a year and kids coming from out of state. I mean, like Sherron said, almost our whole roster for how many years was based on Indiana. And then you'd have to go and say, well, I mean, Reynolds was from Ohio or Illinois. I mean, it's not like he was from California.
Right.
So you're talking Midwest. And again, I hate to say it. And again, you have to have talent. He knows it. And I know it. Talent's going to win, but you still have to, when you still go get those 5 stars from Louisiana, California, New York, Brooklyn, whatever the case may be, and you forget that Midwest, that's what the Purdue's, the Indianas, the Ohio States, the Big Ten has been based on for years and years and years. And when you start doing this, it's another world.
Sherron, your kids, I know anybody that has the dream of going on to that next level, playing in college, style of play has to be of uber importance to them with their particular game and how their game will fit in someplace. And with that, and in Indiana, style just doesn't seem to change now, which before it didn't. Back in Pat's day, your day, it didn't change that much, but it didn't need to change because it worked. When something is not working as well, there needs to be adjustments, and not seeing those adjustments, that has to be off-putting to players as well.
I think players nowadays specifically look at 2 things, Jim. I think that they, number one, as we spoke about before, they look at the NIL money. Then the second thing that they look at is a direct route to the NBA. And here's the thing that I think that most people don't think about. If you look across the board and you take all of the college players potentially trying to play at the NBA level, I mean, man, there's only 33 teams in the NBA. I mean, man, and I think if I remember the numbers correctly, less than 1% of the college kids get an opportunity to play at the NBA. I mean, man, so we have this deal at the collegiate level that we are catering specifically to NBA talent, but most of the student athletes that we are catering to from an NBA perspective aren't even going to have the opportunity to play in the NBA. So I think that we definitely have to reroute and kind of look at how we have this thing set up, because I think it's doing two things to our student athletes. Number one, it's painting a false reality of the opportunities that they have to go make millions of dollars to play basketball. And the second thing that I think that it does is it pigeonholes our student athletes because they don't have a plan B.
Pat,
and I was one of the kids. I was one of the guys fortunate outside of the basketball arena, if you will.
Pat, before we switch topics and get into you guys taking on in the tournament tomorrow. So now Indiana has 0 recruits, and there is just so much. There's a lot of negativity from the fan base. On top of that, where does Indiana go now? I know you're not talking to anybody there. Everything that you're just like the rest of us. You're on the outside looking in.
That's the thing. Everybody thinks. I told you yesterday we got done with practice, which Sherron and them practiced at I think the day before, but I got done with practice at Southridge and I had like 27 text messages, and I'm like, hell, first thing was I'm like, is my wife and kids okay? And then I looked and saw what it was, and you're like, wow. I get on the phone. I called Leary. I said, hey, what's going on? So I don't have any information up there. Everybody thinks I do, and I don't. I have no clue. I have not talked to Calvert. I don't, I haven't talked to anyone like that. So I can only guess. But honest to God, like, I'm speechless. I do not know what you do. I don't know. I mean, Sherron had a class. I had 7 guys coming in. I mean, I don't know what you do when you don't have a recruit. You're going to have to base everything on the transfer portal. And let's be honest, there are certain kids that are in the transfer portal for the right reasons. And there's certain kids that are just wanting that 5th year or COVID year, say. I get that. But there's just too many transfers that there's a reason they've been at 2 or 3 different schools over 2 or 3 different years. And if you start falling victim to that and taking those kids, good luck, because it isn't going to work out. But Leary made a great comment yesterday. He goes, we needed a home run with McNeeley or one recruit. Now you kind of almost need 2 grand slams in 1 inning. I mean, you have to go out and get a number of kids. And again, is Ware going to go to the NBA, and you start questioning all that and who's leaving and who's staying? I don't know. I mean, it's the damnedest thing I've ever seen, and I didn't think this would ever come to that place. But it's one of the oddest things I've ever seen happen, and it probably is going to happen more times going forward to other schools too. When you're living in that transfer portal, but you got a couple recruits and they don't mesh, they don't equal out, and then when guys leave because there's always something better with the money, like Sherron said. So I have no clue. What they are going to do here on out.
I wanted that to be the last question on that subject, but Sherron, I do want to ask this. Does the fans and the existence of Twitter and social media and all of that, how much does that affect these players, do you think, that are looking at going, the fans of Indiana affect the guys that are potentially going to Indiana?
Oh, I think that it plays a huge part into it, Jim. I mean, man, these kids, they're so focused on social media and the things that they see, the things that they read. It's part of their daily life. And I think that the fan base plays a huge part in that, in the recruiting process, as well as obviously as the coaches. I would tell you this, I've had the opportunity to see most of the talent in the state of Indiana. And I can tell you guys, we have some really, really good players in the state of Indiana that, in my humble opinion, that could go to IU and play right now. I mean, there's a kid down in Brownstown named Jack Benner that's going to Purdue he could literally go and play right now at Indiana University. I mean, man, so and that's just one example. I mean, man, the Flory kid from Kokomo, super, super talented, going to Kansas. I mean, man, these are guys that's right in our backyard. I mean, man, that I think that obviously is wearing that
Braden
Indiana
Smith
high school
was begging
tag.
to go to IU.
Guaranteed. There's a kid at Center Grove named Smith that's really good. He's shooting 58% from the 3-point line with over 100 attempts. I mean, man, and my question is, specifically being a former player and a current coach, is anybody going and recruiting or looking at Jack to see, are they going to Smiths? Are they going to Center Grove? Are they going to Lawrence North? Or, are they going to these places to see the kids that's in our backyard and creating these relationships? Like, they should be so excited that an IU coach is there in their gym. They should be so excited. I mean, man, just the passion and the love. For the university and the tradition and the player. I mean, man, it's so much that's involved in it. But right now, I think that it's something that we definitely need to focus on in our recruiting process.
And it's going to be a gigantic weekend for our 2 guests, Pat Graham and Sherron Wilkerson, former Hoosiers teammates, as a matter of fact. They were on with us earlier this year. It was awesome. They were getting ready to play in what turned out to be a hell of a game then. It was a 3-point win by Jeffersonville, and Harrison looking for a little payback at this time of year, especially. Pat, you guys lost the first game by 3. What was the key? What were the keys to that game?
Well, between Sherron and I, this is just going to be a bunch of coach talk. So we're not going to slip and give any information, but I'll do the whole thing. They played well. We didn't play very well, all that stuff. I don't think, to be honest with you, when we played earlier, I don't particularly think either team played very well. Really hadn't seen each other play and all that stuff. It was early on in the season. We did not play well. And I'm guessing Sherron will say pretty much the same thing. Their big kid got in foul trouble, who's a hell of a player. Our big kid got in foul trouble, who's a hell of a player. I mean, it was I think both those kids probably combined played maybe 20 minutes. It wasn't, and I'm not blaming the referees or anything, but we didn't play particularly well. And probably kind of from an outsider just coming in to watch 2 pretty good teams play, they probably were pretty disappointed in both teams because I don't think either team played very well. Now let's go forward. I mean, Jeffersonville's a hell of a lot better than what they were, and I think we are too. So it'll be a good chess game to say the least.
Sherron, you run the motion offense, right?
We run a version of the motion offense, yes. I think, Jim, I will be honest with you, and that's one of the things. Quick story. So when I was in high school, man, we averaged 94 points a game in 32 minutes. So due to my lack of knowledge of how the college game was played, I just assumed in 40 minutes we was going to average 104. So I get to IU, and obviously, man, we're running a controlled motion type offense. I mean, man, it was like culture shock, right? I mean, and it was a huge adjustment. But as I got older and specifically playing at the professional level, what I didn't realize at the time playing for Coach Knight was that if you can run a motion offense, you can run any offense out there because that motion offense incorporates every action that any other offense would include. I mean, man, so I did not realize the huge advantage, specifically now being a coach, that I had in understanding how to read screens and back cuts and curl cuts and flare cuts. And I mean, man, it's just a huge advantage. And in watching, Harrison play, I mean, man, it's very similar. I mean, man, those guys run a lot of the same actions that we run. And I think it just contributes, or it attributes to the fact that the fundamentals of basketball never change. And Coach Knight, man, at that time was so far ahead of everybody else.
Pat, having played in that type of system, what's it like to coach against that, to try to defend that and to beat it?
It's a hell of a lot easier to prepare for a team that just runs set after set after set after set. And I can remember from Coach Hinton in high school, I can remember playing teams that did that, and basically all you had to do was stop the first initial pass that threw the offense out of whack, your advantage defense. But yeah, I mean, I think Jeffersonville and Harrison are very similar in that we're going to take what the defense gives you, and you can do a little bit of everything. They got a style, and we have a style, and it's just, again, trying to play the best basketball you can at 3:00 or 4:00 tomorrow. And hopefully they miss a few more shots than we do. But as far as learning, I still go back to I was blessed, different Sherron. I was blessed that I had Coach Hinton, and I learned a type of motion, and thank God I had it, because if I'd have got to IU, like he said, it was totally shock. I mean, to pick this up, it wasn't the easiest thing for certain guys. I probably had it a little bit easier just because of my background with Coach Hinton and Coach Dust and how we played. So it's a little bit of a culture shock for kids, I'll tell you that.
Oh, Dust, throw that one name out there. That's a name I hadn't heard in a long time. Holy cow. It should be, the excitement level of high school basketball in Indiana is still just fun. Not playing in Seymour for you, Sherron, has got to be a little weird this year with the change in how the tournament is set up, because I grew up going to that gym, watching Pat and the guys before him play, and you played there and everybody afterwards in the biggest gym, and they would fill it. And now guys are down in Pat's part of the country. Yeah, we'll get Sherron back. I think that he's lost a connection. We'll get him back. But for you, Pat, not playing at Seymour, that's your team at least. I mean, you grew up playing in those games, watching those games, knowing those games. Different setup now with the tournament. Does that make it much of a difference?
Well, that we could do an hour, or I could do an hour-long show on the class basketball thing that still pisses me off, but it is what it is, and move on. But I was going to joke with Sherron, they win sectional, we win sectional, blah, blah, blah. And then the next day or that night, we find out where you play. It could have been Lagodi, it could have been Washington, it could have been Southridge, it could have been Seymour. Selfishly, I wanted to go to Seymour just because it's probably my favorite gym other than Floyd Central in the state of Indiana. But I didn't want to go because I think Sherron and them had already played, obviously, 2 games in sectional. They played at Seymour during the regular season. I'm like, I don't want them to have a 4th game in that gym when we haven't played. So, yeah, I selfishly wanted to go myself just because It's one of my favorites, but I was like, yeah, Sherron and them don't need any more advantage than they already have. So when we found out it was at Southridge, I was a little bit happy.
What are differences? Seymour is such a big gym, holds over 8,000 people. I don't know the capacity of Southridge. What size is that gym?
I don't know. I would probably say it obviously is an old gym. But man, again, we were up there last night. It is really nice. It is a really nice, and they've put a lot of money in it. I know that counties put a lot of money in it, and it's a really, really nice gym. It's a sunken gym. It's an old school gym, to say the least, but I like it. We played there a few years ago, and Silver Creek actually beat us when my son was a junior at Memorial, when they won state that year, and that's where we played. Awful cool gym, and they've done an awful nice job in keeping it up.
Sherron, Pat said he was very happy that he's not going to have to face you guys at Seymour because of your familiarity with that gym and the success you've had there and all that. But so now you've got to go down to his part of the country. Does that make much of a difference for your team?
I think it makes a huge difference, Jim. I do. I think it makes obviously they're probably going to have a huge fan base there that's going to obviously be their sixth man and help them. Hopefully we're going to get the same support. The gym is absolutely amazing. For my first time having the opportunity to be in the gym and see it, it has an Indiana nostalgic feel to it. Man, it's very similar to Newcastle's gym. As Pat said, it's kind of in a bowl. Man, so it's I feel like I'm in the movie Hoosiers. Man, it's like it's just a wonderful feel, and it's really hard to put into words.
I cannot wait. I've not been to that gym. I went down to where did I go? I forget. Wherever Trent Sisley played last, I was down there. It's just good to get around to see some of these different gyms. But yeah, Seymour was just always the spot, though, man. My youth growing up, I just remember, yes, it's extra time. We get to go to Seymour. It was going to be fun. And I don't know, moving around, I guess, can be good because leaving everything the same all the time, it may not allow for growth. But I sure wish you guys were playing in Seymour. I think that would just be one hell of a crowd, loud. And there would still be a lot of red in there, though.
There'd be a lot of red, but think about this. And this is one thing, I don't want to get off on a tangent, but when Sherron played and I played, Seymour was packed. They were scalping tickets outside. That gym wouldn't be packed tomorrow if us four teams were there. There'd be a hell of a crowd, and kids would think it was awesome. But me and Sherron and you, remembering back in the day, we'd be like, "No, this is okay." So they can do that now because class basketball and all this stuff, and even games being on television now, it's hurt the fans. I shouldn't say it hurts the fans. It's hurt the numbers in the stands, is what I'm saying. And I would say tomorrow will be a pretty decent crowd, just for the simple fact it's not as big as Seymour's gym. But like I said, Sherron, I didn't want you all to play there for the fourth time this year and get that advantage. I made a few phone calls trying to get us moved anywhere. I didn't care. Play in Kentucky for all I care.
It must have worked, man.
I don't know we could get, my friend. Yeah.
I cannot wait to watch this game. Pat, I can't thank you enough as always, and I wish you the best of luck. Sherron, I can't thank you enough as always. I wish you the best of luck. That way I don't have to I'm going to ride the line, baby. I'm going to ride the line. I'll wear red, so I'll be very supportive. And whomever wins, let the chips fall where they may. But I certainly looking forward to a hell of a game, and it's just going to be a blast. But I'm certainly congratulations to both of you for the seasons that you've had and the jobs that you've done. It's fun to watch. It really is. I know the fans enjoy it greatly. Thank you guys for taking time out of your day to spend with us.
Appreciate it. Yeah. See you guys tomorrow.